Coach Mo.
Hey, it's Coach Mo.
Hey, it's Coach Mo.
Knowing what you want to accomplish professionally is just the beginning. I'm Coach Mo, and this podcast is for young professionals and emerging leaders who want to lead, achieve, and succeed at work. You've got executive ambitions and the drive to get there. Join me for perspective, insights, and thought-provoking questions that only you can answer. Today's episode starts now.
Tuesdays with Coach Mo.
In the last podcast, it was the first of our two-part diversity series. We discussed the corporation and you, and I spoke with Dr. Tim Ewing, a diversity, equality, and inclusion expert about diversity in the corporate workplace. In today's podcast, we're discussing the community and you, and in particular, discussing young professionals and the opportunity for being involved in the community. But let's first establish that how community is defined will really be unique for each of us. We can easily connect with like-minded individuals anywhere around the world where we are engaged and feel a part of a community, and that in and of itself is powerful and highly valued. However, what I'm speaking of today is in reference to the community where you live and work. I guess you could say that area closest to your own backyard. It's widely known that young professionals today have a requirement that the corporations they work for be socially responsible. Consider these statistics. In a research conducted by American Express, they discovered 78% of millennial respondents said that the values of their employer should match their own. Net Impact and Rutgers University discovered that 50% of millennials say they would take a pay cut to find work that matches their values. And researchers with Case Foundation discovered half of millennials were influenced to accept a job based on a company's involvement with causes, programs, or initiatives that help people and communities. A recent example that demonstrates this generation's commitment to having a positive and purpose-driven impact is what we've all witnessed with the recent protests here in the U.S. and abroad. Standing shoulder to shoulder in cities across the country over many days and weeks were a racially diverse range of young people amplifying calls for policy reform. So whether or not you were amongst the protesters, put yourself there for a moment. Just imagine you're there holding your handmade sign that reads, "No justice, no peace," written on a piece of cardboard, all the while chanting alongside others saying, "Black Lives Matter, Black Lives Matter." I was there in my local community taking part in the protest here in South Florida, and what I witnessed was people having conversations with their neighbors, community members who they were meeting for the very first time, all while engaging in this shared experience from which new relationships could possibly emerge. So you may be thinking, Coach Mo, what does this have to do with me advancing my career as I pursue executive ambitions? And I say that's a great question. You see, here's the problem. When connecting with a virtual-based community, it is convenient. It is easy. You can connect virtually any day at any time with like-minded individuals that may offer a meaningful boost to your day. But I want to encourage you to consider the value of engaging in your community in person. You know, that local area where you go to get your groceries, you go to the gym, that's fairly close to your backyard. With local engagement, you then have an opportunity for creating a space for building relationships with people very different than you, and that creates opportunities. You may possibly strike up a relationship with someone who may, in turn, become a mentor to you. Or you'll meet peers who work for different companies, different organizations, who are now part of your network that you may, in fact, tap into as you have a future career move. Who knows? Now, I realize in this current world of living with COVID, there's not much available for connecting face to face with community members. But you can start preparing yourself for where and how to plug in when we proceed into our new normal. And for those who stay until the end of today's podcast, I'm going to let you in on a little fun fact about how my volunteering in the Chicago community actually resulted in my relationship with a very famous person. I'm pretty certain you're going to know a thing or two about the person I'm going to mention. Now, let's turn to my guest on this week's podcast, Dwayne Bryant, who's the founder and CEO of InterVision International Incorporated, where he motivates, educates, and inspires individuals to achieve their maximum potential in their personal lives and the communities in which they live. I met Dwayne years ago as we were both hired as speakers for a conference in Washington, D.C., and we were both addressing a high-achieving group of college students. One thing I can say for certain is that Dwayne knows how to engage the room. He knows how to deliver a message with the energy and enthusiasm that keeps you at the edge of your seat. More importantly, he knows the importance of connecting with the community. For professionals of color, many are oftentimes the first in their family to graduate from college and secure gainful employment in a top corporation, possibly the federal government or a large nonprofit organization. As a result of their high achievements, they may begin to enjoy a different social class as they climb the ladder of career advancement. And there's a high likelihood that their newfound knowledge and skills may be very beneficial not only to the community where they now live, but also to the community where they grew up. You'll hear Dwayne touch on this as he shares his personal story. So I invited Dwayne to today's podcast for 3 reasons. First, he is someone who has successfully navigated that pivot point from being a corporate employee to being a successful entrepreneur serving communities across the country. Second, he's the author and creator of The Stop, a resource for youth about improving relationships between the police and the local community, which I believe is a very timely conversation. And third, he's someone who understands the need for that untapped resource of professionals, in particular professionals of color, serving their community. In addition to this being a fun conversation, be sure to listen as I outline 4 key benefits young professionals receive by being engaged in their local community. And be sure to stay to the end of today's broadcast where I will reveal the name of a celebrity who I developed a special relationship with before they became a household name. And this relationship developed as a result of being involved in the community. So it goes to show that you never know who you will cross paths with when you're doing purpose-driven work. Enjoy the interview. Dwayne, talk a little bit about the product that you came out with, the Stop. And that was a few years ago. And yet, in light of today's environment, is so timely. Talk about what was the nugget of the idea that prompted you to create the Stop, and tell the audience about it.
Absolutely. So I was doing a workshop in Chicago on the South Side at Drake Elementary School. And I was doing a bullying workshop with 4th, 5th, and 6th graders. And I asked a simple question. If you're on a playground playing, minding your own business and doing nothing wrong, if a police car drove over, what would you do? And literally at least 80% of the students yelled out, "Run!" I said, wait, what? Why would you run? And they said, because we don't want to get shot and we don't want the police to harass us and stop us from going home. 2 of the bigger boys said, well, I wouldn't run, but if they mess with me, I'm going to mess with them. And I literally was frozen. I'm like, oh my God, our babies' first thought, idea, concept of law enforcement is going to get them hurt. And then literally 2 months later, I had a police encounter that went viral, and it was a white officer. And I was driving from Chicago to Battle Creek, Michigan, going through Indiana. And he told me I was doing 20 miles per hour over the speed limit. He said, either I can give you a $500 ticket or take you to jail. And by the way, you crossed 2 lanes of highway without signaling. And I said, wait a minute. That's what they told Sandra Bland. They're going to try to take me to jail and kill me. This white man tried to kill me. And so literally I was like, what? So I'm thinking all these crazy thoughts, like I should back my car up into the engine and speed off, just crazy stuff. And the Holy Spirit was like, I did not give you the spirit of fear, but of a sound mind. You talk to this man. He's a man, you're a man. And so as I began to talk to him, he brought back a $150 ticket. As I began to say, thanks, can I take a picture? He asked why. I explained what just happened. He took the ticket, ripped it up, and said, hey, have a good day. And so that was the beginning, the genesis of the stop.
Wow. Wow. Having that actual experience and the power of just humanity.
Yeah,
You said,
absolutely.
I'm a man, he's a man. Let's have some conversation. And we,
Correct.
as we know and as we've seen, sometimes there is no time for conversation.
Right. This is true. You have to
Because
know how to navigate in an instant.
Exactly. And so in terms of the stop, how has that been received with your audiences?
Sure, it has been received well. There was one time where some woman said, what are you trying to do? Teach our kids how to act. I said, no, it's not about teaching anyone how to act. What it is doing, it is empowering our young people to be proactive, to understand that the FBI did say that there are many white supremacist and neo-Nazi individuals who join law enforcement. So if that's the case, you need to know how to navigate this. You need to know how to use your power. Because when I ask students who have the power in a stop, they always say the police. And I say, that's not true. And then one parent said, well, why would you teach my child they have power? They don't have no power. I said, man, what you're doing is you're teaching your child that they are powerless. And I will never tell a young person they're powerless. She said, well, what power does he have? I said, he has power over his words, his tone, and his body language. Now, we saw George Floyd, so we know that that can be negated with that. However, I'm talking about it won't work 100% of the time because it does depending on the police officer who comes. But what I want to do is increase the probability that our young people have the tools to navigate successfully. Because at the end of the day, you don't want a 20-second or 20-minute police encounter to derail 20 years of your life.
Exactly. And that's so powerful. And it really resonates, Dwayne, with young professionals, that message of your words, your tone, your body language make a difference.
Right.
Because in these large corporations where these young professionals are working, it's a new experience. And being in a room in particular, if you are a person of color, or if you are women sitting in a room of all men, that there is something to be said about how you show up in those moments, such that you are seen as a leader and you're accomplishing your goals in your role. You're advancing your career in such a way that you are powerful. You are not powerless.
Absolutely.
Because the system is not designed for you.
Right. And here's what's interesting on that note, though. First of all, the system knows your power. It knows your power, which is why it has been designed, depending on which system we're talking about, to suppress, to depress, to oppress your power. And if it can convince you that you are powerless, then now it has you exactly where it wants you to be. So I think the first thing is knowing who you are, being self-aware, having knowledge of self, knowledge of history. And when you bring that to the table, there is no system, no board that can suppress you because you are walking in your authentic power and no one can take that away from you.
Nice. Really nice. And that takes a real healthy dose of confidence.
Absolutely.
And so as we consider our conversation for today, is really kind of creating this bridge from this terrific work that you are doing with Intervision and connecting with the community, connecting with young people and the audiences that I serve in corporate who are trying to build their leadership skills, advance their career, make a difference. A lot of the individuals I work with have earned advanced degrees. You go get your MBA or your master's in public administration. Whatever it is, you believe that you're building your value, your equity, because you've gotten this advanced education, only to go into a system that you find doesn't respect it. They don't see that same value. Is that because of who you are? And so one of the things I'd like to impart in the audience during our time today is how to engage with the community that supports you as a young professional in building your leadership experience. One of the things I recall from my early days working for Eastman Kodak Company in Chicago is I used my own personal time to invest in community initiatives, volunteering. I became a big sister to someone in the Robert Taylor Homes, a housing project there in Chicago. And that led me into sitting on some local boards in the community and being an advocate on a number of different levels for, basically our people of color and our Black community in particular in Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
That being said, what I learned as I considered that experience is it really benefited me in four ways. Number one, I was role modeling for these young people that I was engaging with in the community, right? Because they would often say to me, oh, like, we haven't seen anyone like you, or I didn't know that, that we could get a job as a, Black person in this community in a corporation. Secondly, I became an ambassador for the community inside of the organization. So there were projects and initiatives that the community were in need of. And I was going back into the corporation to say, hey, Kodak, you're saying that you stand for initiatives related to environment, diversity, and education. Well, here I have a local community initiative that needs some support. So I was an ambassador. Number three is it helped me to develop my leadership skills. So at the time, I was an individual contributor, but here I started helping to create something in the community and was working on all of those initiatives we've just mentioned in terms of choice of words, the tone, the body language, because all of that builds into how I then learn to influence people, which is a marquee leadership skill. And then the last benefit, as I look at that period of time, was I built relationships with other leaders from other organizations who were also invested in the community. And so when I consider the value that I had for myself professionally, but more importantly to the community, I was like, wow, why aren't more of our young people doing this? Now, you have a background having started out, Dwayne, in corporate.
Yes.
What are your thoughts on the value of young professionals investing time and energy in the community?
Well, I think it's absolutely critical. And actually, I think it would actually help them in their jobs and on their careers because it provides a beautiful balance. When I worked literally 2 weeks after graduating college, I started my corporate career with Johnson & Johnson in Miami, then got promoted to Detroit, promoted to St. Louis, promoted to Chicago, all within a 6-year period of time. And so that's a lot of promotion, that's a lot of relocation. But what happened is, I honestly believe corporations consume so much of your time that if you are not connected to the community, you only see yourself as a corporate, I don't want to say a robot, but as a corporate employee. And what that does is all of your thoughts, all of your energy is going towards building this multi-billion-dollar conglomerate, which is absolutely fantastic. However, it's still not building you personally, and it's not building the community in which you live, in which you grew up. So part of our purpose in life is to make things better, to make our families, to make our communities better. And the best way to do that is to serve. And how do you serve? On your off time, whether it's speaking in a school, whether it's sharing the knowledge that you're getting, whether it's starting a small mentoring program for a small group of students, something that will enable you to really to stir up your passion, and that will make you do better on the job as well, I believe.
Well, and it's interesting along the lines of the term of considering someone almost becomes like a robot, right? That I do hear it often for individuals who have, through years of experience inside of a corporation, and recognizing that they've kind of hit a level that they're not going to advance and the frustration builds in, they come to recognize that they've allowed their corporate life to define them. Like they have no other aspects to their life.
Yeah. Well, I was guilty of that. My family used to call me Mr. J&J. Your name is no longer Dwayne, it's Mr. J&J. Because whenever I would come around, I really loved what I did. I was in sales and I loved it. I believed in the product. I'd give them sample products. Hey, try this out. This feature and benefit, blah, 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 blah. They're like, man, just give us the product. We don't want to hear all that stuff. And so it is easy to get consumed in the corporate world. And I think one beautiful thing about being involved in community, it keeps you connected to your soul.
Nice. I'm grabbing that one. Keeps you
Yes.
connected to your soul. That's so
Because you
powerful.
don't want to lose, you don't want to gain the world and lose your own soul.
Hmm. And so I invite you to take that a step further.
Sure.
Keeping you connected to your soul, how does that benefit someone inside of the organization?
Got it. Okay. So let me I like real life examples.
Yeah.
So I grew up single parent mom, 6 children, daddy left. I was an angry kid. I was a bully. I used to fight. I got put out of an elementary school. According to stats, this young guy is not going to make it. So when I was with Johnson and Johnson, I literally would volunteer because I told them I must volunteer because I did it in college as well. I said, I must volunteer, even if it's once a month or twice a month in a school, talk to young people. They're like, well, why is that important? I said, because I did not have this growing up. And had I had this, then I would have been able to make better decisions early on in life. So I said, me helping these children is also them helping me, and me saving them is them saving me. Them saving me makes me a better human being, a better productive employee, and someone who can contribute more to humanity. They're like, wow, you figured all that out? I said, absolutely. So if you want me to sell more product, I must do something to connect to my roots, and my roots is my community. So therefore, they're like, hell, do you need to bring floor stands when you go? I said, absolutely. Let's give away Reach toothbrushes. Let's give away Band-Aids. So they're like, this is fantastic. So then they saw that whereas most Black people were using Curad and were using private label stuff for baby soap and things of that nature, baby wash, it was like, hey, when you bring Johnson and Johnson, now it gives them an option.
And it's value add.
Absolutely. The community benefited. I benefited. Johnson and Johnson benefited. It was a triple win, no lose situation.
Exactly. And I've heard that from so many young people who have, in fact, chosen to invest time outside of the organization. It has given them some fresh perspective on who they are and that they are much more than just someone on behalf of the organization, and that they are an individual with, as you mentioned, a soul. I love that.
Yeah.
And I had a young professional recently telling me how through her church and things that she's been able to do has given her that perspective. So, we don't have to look far, but there is a great need. We can turn on the news every night and hear the news about the public schools. And even if whatever organization you're working in, whether you're going into an office, and of course, no one's doing that at this particular time, but even virtually, go into a public school to offer your services. The young people need to see you and hear you and experience you, which is so very important. And in addition to that individual I was referencing, who also was spending time through her local church, she said just the mind space to be able to break the constant focus on what was or wasn't happening in the office.
Correct.
Was valuable because it provided a purpose-driven reason to kind of disconnect and then show up on Monday more engaged. And that is something that actually the young professional group out of Cleveland, my hometown, yay, Cleveland, they did a survey of their young professionals and posted an article. And that young professional group is called Engage Cleveland. But their research showed that their young professionals want to be involved.
Oh, yeah.
In the community, because it increases the engagement. And so companies, take a note, lean in on this podcast that for you to keep your high performing young professionals, they want to know that you care about them and supporting them, giving them some time away from the office for whatever their external affairs or community relationship initiatives they want to be invested in. That helps them in their engagement in you. As a company.
Correct. And the other piece of that, too, is after COVID-19, nothing is resetting to normal. There is no going back to normal. And that means some of these young people have already gotten engaged in causes, and whether it's demonstrations, whether it's activating, their talents and their skills. So that is going to have to be a necessary part of corporate fabric to be able to figure out how do we allow our employees to create purpose. And honestly, it's about building humanity and connecting communities. And that's what corporations do. They provide their services to communities, to individuals, and then that happens through their employees. So I think, honestly, if corporations are intelligent, they can see that as a long-term win-win strategy.
I would be remiss here, Dwayne, if I didn't invite you to share with the listeners, how did you make the pivot from J&J and your journey to Intervision? Because so many young professionals, they're hungry for there's no real roadmap, right, on how you create something for yourself as you've done. And they want to do some even side gigs. So kind of where was your vision, right, when you set out? And what tips do you have for someone who's looking to create or build something kind of on the side?
Sure. Well, a few things. I would say, I think it was destiny in my case, because I grew up with a grandmother who was an evangelist, and she would always have us praying at a young age, ask God for your purpose in life. You need to know what you're here for. And then even in college, Dr. Miles Monroe, a Bahamian pastor, would always say, you must understand the purpose of a thing. If you don't know the purpose of a thing, abuse is inevitable. And then he would say stuff like, your heart is where your treasure is, and treasure is not a paycheck, it's fulfillment. And I'm like, whoa, what is all of this conversation? So one day I just asked God, what is my purpose? And he said, I want you with the young people. And I'm like, what? I'm not going to be a broke school teacher. I'm 27 at that time, 27, making $105,000 a year. God, I think that's the devil. I rebuke thee. And so when I listened, it was like all the signs were pointing. But see, the neat thing is the young people who you're talking to are more than likely college graduates, more than likely with advanced degrees. That means, without trying to be too judgmental, that means they are the best of the best in our communities. They have already defied the odds. They've already gone to college. They didn't just go to college, they graduated college, which puts them literally in the top 10, 15%. And I'm not saying value who they are as individuals, but I'm saying that what they can do and what they can produce. Mm-hmm. So therefore, they must understand. And I left college saying, I'm going to give Johnson & Johnson no more than 5 to 6 years, and I'm going to start my own business. So when I graduated from college, I was going into this corporate structure knowing this. And so when I got ready to pivot, I was in Chicago, and I had prayed the prayer, and I asked God for vision and wisdom, and I started creating my company long before I left, to the point that when I got ready to resign, my manager gave me a lithograph by Graham Greene that said, there's many opportunities that will catch a person's mind, but only a few will catch your heart. Pursue those. So she was literally saying, D, I know this is what you're supposed to be doing. Go. And if we can help and support you, we will. So when I made the pivot, it was clear that I had been doing the work. This is what I was most passionate about. And I knew that I could stay with J&J. I could do well. I can have 2.5 kids. I can make, $200,000. But I knew personally that my life, God was requiring more from me. And I did not want to forsake the calling that was on my life. So pivoting was more of a divine thing. And if people haven't discovered their purpose, I say, stay on that job, because leaving a good paying quality job to say, I'm going to try to figure it out, it makes no sense. You're more intelligent than that. Mm-hmm. Have a plan. If you're going to pivot, know what it is that you want to do, and start doing it while you're on the job to see if you really are passionate about it, if you really, are committed to that thing. And then once you do, I'll always say, ask for spiritual guidance. Make sure that you're in God's will. And then if you are, go ahead and make the decision to leave.
Mm-hmm. And in today's environment, there are resources to support individuals in that. It sounds from your story that you were self-motivated, self-guided, were making that happen for yourself. Yes. There are many people who just talk it, right?
Right.
And when I say resources, actually coaching, whether it be with me or someone else, a coach can support someone in creating the space to build out that plan.
Well, you know what? Let me mention something. If I had a coach, Mo, if I had you, then I could have shortened, because literally when I tell you, when I left, I was a baroque for at least a year. and some change. Now, when you go from making 100-some grand with a company car, corporate expense account, to being broke, that is no fun. So I literally jumped out the plane, started flapping my wings, just like, Jesus, please don't let me hit the ground. Whereas if I had you or a coach, then you could have said, hey, have you put a business plan together? Have you saved amount of money? Have you strategically started looking at how you want to implement? So I absolutely recommend, if these young people have access to you, and I only thought you deal with presidents and Tony Robbins and people like that. But if they have access to you, I definitely would strongly recommend tapping into it, because you have the knowledge, wisdom, the demonstrated results that you can help them strategically transition versus just an abrupt leaving.
Exactly. And having a plan and then working
Correct.
your plan. And when you have that while you're working your corporate job, work with a coach who can help you stay
Yeah.
on track, be your accountability.
Yes.
Because granted, life happens, things get in the way. But when you are invested in a coach, you're like, oh my God, I got to do the work. I'm paying for this.
Correct. Yep.
And to your point, just shorten that horizon, that having that resource along with you. And yes, when you make a big pivot, there's a dip, but you can plan for that. The financial component, along with the plan of what it is you're creating, all of that is part of the space that you can engage in with a coach. So for
Correct.
people to just have this awareness that there are coaches who do this type of work, me included. So you have been really a testament to someone who has made the pivot that so many desire for. So I really appreciate you taking the time to
No,
jump on
thank
today's
you.
podcast.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
So let me recap the 4 benefits for young professionals being engaged in their local community. Number 1 is you have an opportunity to be a role model for youth who may never otherwise have an opportunity to see someone as successful as you. Number 2, become an ambassador for the community organization that you serve by championing resources from within your organization to support that community organization in need. 3, it provides an opportunity for you to develop your leadership skills. And 4, you're expanding your network as you develop peer-to-peer relationships with individuals from other companies and organizations. When you volunteer, you're giving of yourself. This time spent serving others, whether an hour or 2 a week or a month, allows you to create some distance away from whatever else is happening in your world. I get it. We're all busy. And when you invest in volunteering, it allows you a little room to escape all of that. And that warmth that's generated within you as a valued servant to others is powerful. And to know that you make a difference in the life of someone in need truly helps you in your level of engagement when, in fact, you do return to work. So, as I mentioned earlier in today's show, I have a little fun fact to share. As a result of making connections throughout Chicago with various volunteer assignments, I was invited to be a founding member of the Young Leaders Fund, an initiative of the Chicago Community Trust that I'm really pleased to say is still in existence today. The Young Leaders Fund was an opportunity for us to volunteer our time and build an organization that focused on providing grants to small, startup, nonprofits that serve communities in the Chicago area. And grants were issued to programs that supported arts and culture, community and economic development, and child development and education. And we were a group of young professionals under the age of 40. So one of the significant benefits was the opportunity to develop skills in philanthropy and grant making. And during the launch phase of Young Leaders Fund, I led the education committee, meaning we reviewed and assessed grants in that category. Well, recently, as I was rummaging through boxes of things from my time in Chicago years ago, I actually came across the roster of members who were on the education committee. It was here I was reminded that Michelle Obama was actually one of my committee members. See, you never know who you'll meet by being actively engaged in your community. And now for Coach Mo Knows, a tip, a coaching question, and a bit of inspiration. So my tip this week is actually a two-part tip. The first part is to do some research and identify opportunities in your local community for volunteering. I'm going to give you a few website addresses as a starter, and the links to these sites will be available in today's show notes. The first site to visit is catchafire.org. The second is volunteermatch.org. And the third is idealist.org. So check those out and see how you may, in fact, identify opportunities in your local area. Now, the second part of this week's tip is to reach out and get in touch with Dwayne Bryant. So I invite you to either visit his website at www.dwaynebryant.com. And again, that link will be in the show notes. Or reach out to Dwayne and let him know that you want to further explore the likelihood of him offering inspiration to the youth in your community through possibly some of his virtual resources that I believe are in development now. So set up a time to chat with him. And again, his contact information is at www.dwaynebryant.com. And as for the coaching question this week, what will you commit to doing toward community involvement in the next week? Please send me an email at askcoachmo@gmail.com. I'd love to hear of your plans. Our inspiration for this week comes from the Dalai Lama. The sole source of peace in families, countries, and the world is altruism, love, and compassion. As usual, share your workplace dilemma with me by sending me an email at askcoachmo@gmail.com. Send it to me by end of day Friday, and I'll send you a video response by the following Tuesday. Until next time. That's a wrap for this episode of Tuesdays with Coach Mo. Showing up here tells me you're willing to invest in yourself and your career. Get additional resources at TuesdaysWithCoachMo.com. Please subscribe and leave a review. I'd love to get your feedback. Till next time, this is Coach Mo signing off.
Tuesdays with Coach Mo.